No matter what gender, race, or religion you are, stereotypes and unfair treatment are something anyone, including you and I, could likely end up facing. So in the 1970s, Ruth Bader Ginsburg started her work in the law, which ended up significantly affecting the way each of us lives today. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, her actions and her ideas are a turning point in history because for just about forever, the problem was that women, men, and people or minorities with differences were treated based on unfair stereotypes. Women were constantly discriminated against just because of their gender. Before RBG, state-funded schools didn't have to admit women couldn't have a bank account without a male cosigner, women didn't have to serve on juries, and many more such indignities as these. It wasn't even just women who faced unfair treatment because of their gender, it was men too. Ruth Bader Ginsburg was born in Brooklyn, New York on March 15, 1933. Being Jewish, Ruth grew up at the time of World War II. This wasn't the only struggle Ruth Bader Ginsburg faced in her lifetime. RBG's sister died when she was 2, and her mother died when she was 17. RBG faced sexism, assault, and discrimination for being a woman. Ruth Bader Ginsburg also struggled a lot with cancer later in life. Even though Ruth Bader Ginsburg faced many struggles throughout her lifetime, she received a good education through Cornell, Harvard, and Columbia. It was at Cornell where she met her husband, Marty, who ended up being extremely important to her in her life. It was when she transferred to Columbia from Harvard that Ruth became the first person on both the Harvard and Columbia law reviews. After her education, Ruth started her work in the law. RBG served as a law clerk to Edmund Lewis Palmieri, District Judge of the Southern District of New York. Ruth was then a research associate and then associate director of the Columbia Law School Project on International Procedure. She then undertook studies in Sweden for her book on Swedish civil procedure, and not long after, she became the second woman to teach full-time at Rutgers University School of Law in Newark, New Jersey from 1963 to 1972. It was during this period she taught her first gender and law course. In 1965, RBG published her first book on women in the law. This was also around the time when Ruth Bader Ginsburg co-founded the first law journal in the United States devoted to gender equality issues. On June 25, 1971, Ruth Bader Ginsburg wrote her first of many powerful briefs to the Supreme Court in the case Reed v. Reed. Sally Reed, whose son died tragically and killed himself with his father's rifle, wanted to be appointed administrator of her son's estate. The statute read, as between persons equally entitled to administrator of a decedent's estate, males must be preferred to females. The case was the first time the Supreme Court found that gender discrimination was unconstitutional. The decision in the case was revolutionary. It was a turning point in history for equal rights. In the Reed v. Reed case, this was the first time the court applied the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment to strike down a law that discriminated against women. Because of the court's decision in the case and some cases that followed in which RBG also played a part, an equal rights revolution had been sparked. Hundreds of laws had to be changed because people were able, thanks to RBG's example, to say that under the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, it was unconstitutional to deny equal protection based on gender. In the spring of 1972, Ruth Bader Ginsburg co-founded the Women's Rights Project at the American Civil Liberties Union, also known as the ACLU, and became the general counsel for the project. By 1974, the ACLU's Women's Rights Project had participated in nearly 300 gender discrimination cases nationwide. It was mainly starting in the 1970s that RBG got her fair share of gender discrimination and fighting against it. RBG argued 6 landmark cases before the U.S. Supreme Court and won 5 of the cases. The court's decision in Frontier v. Richardson 1973, RBG's first case argued, was an 8-1 decision that decided the benefits given by the United States military to the family of service members could not be given out differently based on gender. Ruth won this case but wasn't 100% in favor of the outcome. She was trying to argue that sex discrimination should be treated equally to race discrimination. Only 4 out of 9 judges agreed with her on this. Ruth would say, quote, "The willingness of the Supreme Court, however, to apply the Equal Protection Clause to race-based discrimination but not to sex-based discrimination was a failure of the courts, not of the 14th Amendment, which could easily encompass all forms of arbitrary discrimination." Overall, however, Ruth was satisfied. Her main goal was to show the court that sex discrimination did in fact exist, a goal at which Ruth most definitely succeeded. Weinberg v. Weisenfeld 1975 was the case brought to the Supreme Court because the appellee, Stephen Charles Weisenfeld, was not allowed the same Social Security benefits a woman was allowed. Stephen Weisenfeld's wife died during childbirth. He wanted to work less and stay home with his son, but found only widows, not widowers, were eligible for Social Security payments. RBG argued on behalf of Stephen Weisenfeld and won. This was because the court agreed that gender-based discrimination regarding these benefits is therefore both illogical and counterproductive. RBG's winning was significant in the march toward the court establishing a jurisprudence of sex equality. Califano v. Goldfarb 1977 was a case extremely similar to Weinberger v. Weisenfeld 1975. RBG argued successfully and won in the Califano v. Goldfarb case because the decision by the United States Supreme Court held that the different calculation of the survivor benefits of men and women under 42 U.S.C. Section 402 of the Social Security Act, SSA, was unconstitutional. RBG's victory in this landmark case required both widows and widowers' survivor benefits to be calculated equally based on their actual contributions to the SSA program. RBG also succeeded in the matter of Dern v. Missouri in 1978. This case, along with Edwards v. Healy in 1974, had to do with the lack of representativeness of communities and juries. Before these cases, women were exempted from jury service unless they wrote in and declared they wanted to serve. RBG won both of these cases in favor of a fair representation of communities and juries, because then women had to serve. RBG said, quote, "Women belong in all places where decisions are being made. It shouldn't be that women are the exception." Two of RBG's cases that were also important, Moritz v. Commissioner of the IRS 1972 and Conn v. Shev in 1974, resulted in a favorable decision for Charles E. Moritz but a loss for Mel Conn in a divided 6-3 Supreme Court decision. RBG succeeded in the Moritz v. IRS Commissioner case, but at the level of the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals. She did not have to appeal the 10th Circuit's decision to the Supreme Court. The Department of Justice representing the IRS is losing position in the case, denying tax deductibility of payments for medical caretaker for Mr. Moritz's mother, contrary to approving such deductibility for similarly situated female taxpayers, filed a petition for a writ of certiorari to the Supreme Court seeking to reverse the 10th Circuit's decision. But the Supreme Court, having discretion to deny the petition, did so, thus allowing the 10th Circuit's decision and RBG's victory to stand. This was tantamount to endorsing the basic findings of the court's decision, which has been cited by attorneys in subsequent equal protection cases. In Conn v. Shev, 6 Supreme Court justices sustained the constitutionality of a Florida statute providing a $500 tax exemption for widows but not for widowers. Based on considerations for a woman's reduced earning capacity at the time, Justices Brennan, Marshall, and White filed strong dissents to the majority decision, agreeing with RBG's arguments, which have also been cited in later cases. Overall, whether RBG succeeded or failed in each case, because of the cases RBG brought before the court, many things had to be changed in order to bestow fairness to all. The ACLU says, during the 1970s, Ginsburg led the ACLU in a host of important legal battles, many before the Supreme Court that established the foundation for the current legal prohibitions against sex discrimination in this country and helped lay the groundwork for the future women's rights advocacy. In January 1972, RBG became the first female tenured professor at Columbia Law School. On April 11, 1980, President Jimmy Carter nominated Ruth Bader Ginsburg to the United States Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit. After Justice Brian White died on June 14, 1993, President Bill Clinton nominated RBG to be an Associate Justice of the United States Supreme Court. She was confirmed by a 96-3 vote. RBG was the first Jewish woman, the second woman, and today, one of only 4 women ever appointed to the High Court. She took her seat on August 10, 1993. On the court, Ruth Bader Ginsburg exerted profound influence as she had in her career to then. Just one example of RBG's impactful influence was that she had the phrase "in the year of our Lord" removed from Supreme Court bar certificates. On June 26, 1996, RBG wrote the majority opinion in her first case as a Supreme Court judge, the landmark case, United States v. Virginia, which required the Virginia Military Institute to admit women. The notion of the case was that people shouldn't be excluded solely because of gender. In 2005, the court became more conservative. This was when Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg started her era of furious dissent and earned the name the Notorious RBG. Two of RBG's largest dissents were in the cases Shelby County v. Holder 2013 and Ledbetter v. Goodyear 2007. Regarding the court's decision and Shelby County v. Holder, a case where the voting discrimination protection was overturned and repealed by the Supreme Court, RBG said some of her most famous words. "Throwing away the Voting Rights Act is like throwing away your umbrella in a rainstorm because you're not getting wet." Ledbetter v. Goodyear was a case where a woman, Lily Ledbetter, was paid 40% less than her male counterparts. The Supreme Court said Lily filed the report too late when she couldn't have filed it sooner because she didn't find out about the unfair payment until later. RBG, with her dissenting opinion, helped create a new law, the Lily Ledbetter Fair Pay Restoration Act, which promoted equal pay. A few more dissenting opinions she had were in the cases Gonzalez v. Cahart 2007, Citizens United v. Federal Election Commission 2010, Connick v. Thompson 2011, and Burwell v. Hobby Lobby Stores 2013. RBG was, as a result of this, her area of furious dissent, the first Supreme Court justice to become a pop culture icon. On August 13, 2013, Ruth Bader Ginsburg became the first Supreme Court justice to officiate a same-sex wedding. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, at 87, died on September 18, 2020, because of complications resulting from metastatic pancreatic cancer. Ruth Bader Ginsburg fought biases and opened the doors for equality and women's rights. Ruth Bader Ginsburg marked her ideas and visions on the world. RBG set precedents and laid the groundwork for a lot of the equal rights work that is being done today. She inspired and encouraged millions of people like me who have been interested in fighting for rights and equality, or even people who haven't, to follow in her footsteps, become activists, and fight for equality like she had. RBG helped millions both directly and indirectly. RBG was respected by everyone, even those who disagreed with her views. Because of RBG, many people today, especially females including me, see her as a role model and have the courage to become something great like she had. Many people believe RBG only fought for women's rights and was solely focused on women, but that is a very strong misconception. RBG fought for men's rights as well as women's and was a champion to all groups discriminated against or otherwise marginalized. RBG mainstreamed the ideas of equity and merit. This means that today, because of Ruth Bader Ginsburg's momentous reforms to our legal system, it doesn't matter who you are, what gender you are, what sexual orientation you are, what race or color you are, what religion or national origin you are, whether you're a veteran or disabled or just an older citizen, you can now, because of RBG's life's work, enjoy an expectation of fairness, impartiality, and the very same chances and opportunities to succeed and accomplish things as anyone else would have.